This is the 7th and last day of the November 91 7-day retreat in Springwater. We'll take a break from questions and inquiry into the questions this morning and read selections from 3 books by Krishnamurti. We'll take a break from questions and inquiring into the questions this morning and read selections from 3 books by Krishnamurti, who died, I believe, in 85 at the age of 90. His books and selections are not brought in as ultimate authority. I'm mentioning it because I'm often asked this question. But to listen to the words, to what is being said with a mind that is open, not defending or resisting. Can we listen that way? First book is called Questions and Answers, and is a selection made by the Krishnamurti Foundation, India. Selection took place in these questions and answers. 79, 80. And I never read this little foreword here in the book. At the beginning of a question and answer meeting at Brockwood Park, Krishnamurti said, "To quest is to seek. Together we are going to seek, find, discover the right answer. This is not the Delphic oracle. Together we're going to find out the meaning and significance of the question and also seek the answer. There's no authority here. I happen to sit on a platform for convenience so that everybody can see, but that little height does not give me any authority whatsoever." So we're not getting away from questions after all. This one here is called, the heading is Creativity. This has come up in meetings. And here the questioner says, what is true creativity? And how is it different from that which is so considered in popular culture? What is true creativity? And how is it different from that which is so considered in popular culture? Okay. What is generally called creativity is man-made. I can add human-made. Painting, music, literature, romantic and factual, all the architecture and the marvels of technology. And the painters, the writers, the poets probably consider themselves creative. We all seem to agree with that popular idea of a creative person. Many human-made things are most beautiful. The great cathedrals, temples, and mosques. Some of them are extraordinarily beautiful, and we know nothing of the people who built them. But now with us, anonymity is almost gone. With anonymity, there is a different kind of creativity, not based on success, money, 28 million books sold in 10 years. Anonymity has great importance. In it, there is a different quality. The personal motive, the personal attitude, and personal opinion do not exist. There's a feeling of freedom from which there is action. But most human-made creativity, as we call it, takes place from the known. The great musicians, Beethoven, Bach, and others, acted from the known. The writers and philosophers have read and accumulated. Although they developed their own style, they were always moving, acting, or writing from that which they had accumulated, the known. And this we generally call creativity. Is that really creative? Or is there a different kind of creativity which is born out of the freedom from the known? Because when we paint, write, or create a marvelous structure out of stone, it is based on the accumulated knowledge carried from the past to the present. Now, is there a creativity totally different from the activity that we generally call creativity? Is there a living, is there a movement which is not from the known? That is there a creation from a mind that is not burdened with all the turmoils of life, with all the social and economic pressures? Is there a creation out of a mind that has freed itself from the known? Generally, we start with the known and from that we create. But is there a creative impulse or movement taking place that can use the known, but not the other way around? In that state of mind, creation as we know it may not be necessary. Is creativity something totally different, something which we can all have, not only the specialist, the professional, the talented, and the gifted? I think we can all have this extraordinary mind that is really free from the burdens which human beings have imposed upon themselves. Out of that sane, rational, healthy mind, something totally different comes, which may not necessarily be expressed as painting, literature, or architecture. Why should it? If you go into this fairly deeply, you will find that there is a state of mind which actually has no experience whatsoever. Experience here implies a mind that is still groping, asking, seeking, and therefore struggling in darkness and wanting to go beyond itself. There is a complete and total answer to the question if we apply our minds and our hearts to it. There is a creativity which is not human-made. If the mind is extraordinarily clear, without a shadow of conflict, then it is really in a state of creation. It needs no expression, no fulfillment, no publicity, and such nonsense. This is called a minority question. You say, we are the world, but the majority of the world seem to be heading for mass destruction. Can a minority of integrated people outweigh the majority? Krishnamurti, are we that minority? Is there one among us who is totally free of all this? Or are we partially contributing to the hatred of each other psychologically? You may not be able to stop one country attacking another, but psychologically, are you free of your common inheritance, which is your tribal, glorified nationalism? Are we free from violence? Violence exists when there is a wall around ourselves. Do please understand all this. And we have built walls. And we have built ourselves walls, 15 feet high and 10 feet thick. All of us have these walls around us. From that arises violence and the sense of immense loneliness. So the minority and the majority are you. If a group of us have psychologically transformed ourselves fundamentally, we will never ask this question, because we are then something entirely different. Freedom. What is freedom? Many philosophers have written about freedom. We talk of freedom, freedom to do what we like, to have any job we like, freedom to choose a woman or a man, freedom to read any book, or freedom not to read at all. We are free, and what do we do with that freedom? We use that freedom to express ourselves, to do whatever we like. More and more life is becoming permissive. You can have sex in the open park or garden. We have every kind of freedom, and what have we done with it? We think that there is choice, that where there is choice, there is freedom. I can go to Italy or France, a choice. But does choice give freedom? Why do we have to choose? If you're very clear, perceive purely, there is no choice. Out of that comes right action. It is only when there is doubt and uncertainty that we begin to choose. So choice, if you will forgive my saying so, prevents freedom. The totalitarian states have no freedom at all because they have the idea that freedom brings about the generation of man. Therefore they control, suppress, you know what is happening. So what is freedom? Is it based on choice? Is it to do exactly what we like? Some psychologists say, if you feel something, do not suppress, restrain, or control it, but express it immediately. And we're doing that very well. Too well. And this is also called freedom. Is throwing bombs freedom? Just look what we have reduced our freedom to. Does freedom lie out there or here? Where do we begin to search for freedom? In the outward world, where you express whatever you like, the so-called individual freedom? Or does freedom begin inwardly, which then expresses itself intelligently, outwardly? Do you understand my question? Freedom exists only when there is no confusion inside me. When I am psychologically and religiously not to be caught in any trap. You understand? There are innumerable traps. Gurus, saviors, preachers, excellent books, psychologists, they are all traps. And if I am confused and there is disorder, must I not first be free of that disorder before I talk of freedom? If I have no relationship with my wife, my husband, or another, because our relationships are based on images, there is conflict, which is inevitable where there is division. So, should I not begin here inside me, in this mind, in my heart, to be totally free of all fears, anxieties, despairs, and the hurts and wounds that one has received through some psychic disorder. Watch all that for oneself and be free of it. But apparently we have not the energy. We go to another to give us energy. By talking to a psychiatrist, we feel relieved, confession, and all the rest of it, always depending on someone else. And that dependence inevitably brings conflict and disorder. So one has to begin to understand the depth and the greatness of freedom. One must begin with that which is nearest, oneself. The greatness of freedom, real freedom, the dignity, the beauty of it, is in oneself when there is complete order. And that order comes only when we are a light to ourselves. This book is called Krishnamurti to himself, his last journal, which he dictated into a recorder. And the selections were dictated in Ojai, California in 1983. It is a new day, and the sun won't be up for an hour or so. It is quite dark, and the trees are silent, waiting for the dawn and the sun to rise behind the hills. There ought to be a prayer for dawn. It comes so slowly, penetrating the whole world. And here, in this quiet, secluded house, surrounded by orange trees and a few flowers, it is extraordinarily quiet. There are no birds as yet singing their morning song. The world is asleep, at least in this part of the world, far from all civilization, from the noise, the brutality, and the talk of politicians. Slowly, with great patience, the dawn begins in the deep silence of the night. It was broken by the morning dove and the hoot of an owl. There are several owls here. They were calling to each other. And the hills and the trees are beginning to awaken. In silence, the dawn begins. It gets lighter and lighter, and the dew is on the leaf, and the sun is just climbing over the hill. The first rays of the sun are caught in those tall trees, in that old oak that has been there for a very, very long time. And the morning dove begins with its soft, mournful call. Across the road, across the orange trees, there is a peacock calling. Even in this part of the world, there are peacocks. At least there are a few of them. And the day has begun. It is a wonderful day. It is so new, so fresh, so alive and full of beauty. It is a new day without any past remembrances, without the call of another. There is great wonder when one looks at all the beauties, those bright oranges with the dark leaves, and the few flowers bright in their glory. One wonders at this extraordinary light which only this part of the world seems to have. One wonders as one looks at the creation which seems to have no beginning and no end, a creation not by cunning thought, but the creation of a new morning. This morning it is as it has never been before, so bright, so clear, and the blue hills are looking down. It is the creation of a new day as it has never been before. There's a squirrel with a long bushy tail quivering and shy in the old pepper tree, which has lost many branches. It is getting very old. It must have seen many storms, as the oak has in its age, quiet, with a great dignity. It is a new morning, full of an ancient life. It has no time, no problems. It exists, and that in itself is a miracle. It is a new morning without any memory. All the past days are over, gone, and the voice of the morning dove comes across the valley, and the sun is now over the hill, covering the earth. And it too has no yesterday. The trees in the sun and the flowers have no time. It is the miracle of a new day. "We want continuity," said the man. Continuity is part of our life. Continuity of generation after generation, of tradition, of the things we have known and remembered. We crave continuity and we must have it. Otherwise, what are we? Continuity is in the very roots of our being. To be is to continue. Death may come, there may be an end to many things, but there's always the continuity. We go back to find our roots, our identity. If one has kept one's beginning as a family, probably one can trace it generation after generation for many centuries, if one is interested in that kind of thing. The continuity of the worship of God, the continuity of ideologies, the continuity of opinions, values, judgments, conclusions. There is a continuity in all the things one has remembered. There is a continuity from the moment we are born until we die, with all the experiences, all the knowledge that man has acquired. Is that an illusion? Asks the man. And K. What has continuity? That oak, probably 200 years old, has a continuity until it dies or is chopped down by man. And what is this continuity which human beings want, crave for? The name, the form, the bank account, the things remembered? Memory has a continuity. Remembrances of that which has been has a continuity. The whole psyche is memory and nothing else. We attribute to the psyche a great many things, qualities, virtues, ignoble deeds, and the exercise of many clever acts in the outer and in the inner world. And if one examines diligently, without any bias or conclusion, one begins to see that our whole existence, with a vast network of memories, remembrances, the things that have happened before, all have continuity. And we cling to that desperately. End of quote. The squirrel has come back. It has been away for a couple of hours. Now it is back on the branch, nibbling at something, watching, listening, extraordinarily alert and aware, alive, quivering with excitement. It comes and goes without telling you where it is going and when it is coming back. And as the day is getting warmer, the dove and the birds have gone. There are a few pigeons flying from one place to another in a group. You can hear their wings beating in the air. There used to be a fox here. One hasn't seen it for a long time. Probably it has gone away forever. There are too many people about. There are plenty of rodents, but people are dangerous. And this is a shy little squirrel, and wayward as the swallow. although there is no continuity except memory, is there in the whole human being, in the brain, a place, a spot, an area small or vast, where memory doesn't exist at all, which memory has never touched. It is a remarkable thing to look at all this, to feel your way sanely, rationally, see the complexities and the intricacies of memory and its continuity, which is, after all, knowledge. Knowledge is always in the past. Knowledge is the past. The past is vast accumulated memory as tradition. And when you have trodden that path diligently, sanely, you must inevitably ask, is there an area in the human brain or in the very nature and structure of a human being, not merely in the outer world of his activities, but inwardly, deep in the vast recesses of his own brain, something that is not the outcome of memory, not the movement of a continuity? The hills and the trees, the meadows and the groves will continue as long as the earth exists, unless human beings in their cruelty and despair destroy it all. The stream, the spring from which it comes have a continuity, but one never asks whether the hills and beyond the hills have their own continuity. If there is no continuity, what is there? There's nothing. One is afraid to be nothing. Nothing means not a thing. Nothing put together by thought, nothing put together by memory, remembrances, nothing that you can put into words and then measure. There is most certainly, definitely an area where the past does not cast a shadow, where time, the past or the future or the present, has no meaning. We've always tried to measure with words something that we don't know. What we do not know, we try to understand and give it words and make it into a continuous noise. And so we clog our brain, which is already clogged with past events, experiences, and knowledge. We think knowledge is psychologically of great importance, but it is not. You cannot ascend through knowledge. There must be an end to knowledge for the new to be. New is a word for something which has never been before. And that area cannot be understood or grasped by words or symbols. It is there beyond all remembrances. The next few selections are from Krishnamurti's notebook, written for 3/4 of a year in the 60s. One selection is from Gstaad, Switzerland, one from Paris, and some from India, Rajghat, Benares, and some other place. It was a beautiful evening in the valley, along the stream, the green meadows so rich in pasturage, the clean farmhouses, and the rapturous clouds so full of color and clarity. There was one that hung over the mountain with such vivid brilliancy that it seemed to be the favorite of the sun. The valley was cool, pleasant, and intensely alive. There was a quietness about it and a peace. Modern farm machinery was there, but they still used the scythe and the pressure, and the pressure and the brutality of civilization hadn't touched it. The heavy electric cables on pylons ran through the valley, and they too seemed a part of that unsophisticated world. As we walked along the narrow grassy path through fields, the mountains with their snow and color seemed so close and delicate, so utterly unreal. The goats were bleating to be milked. Quite unexpectedly, all this extravagant beauty, color, the hills, this rich earth, this intense valley, all this was within one. It wasn't within one. One's own heart and brain were so completely open, without the barrier of time and space, so empty of thought and feeling, that there was only this beauty, without sound or form. It was there, and everything else ceased to be. The immensity of this love, with beauty and death, was there, filling the valley and one's whole being, which was that valley. It was an extraordinary evening. There is no renunciation. What is given up is ever there, and renunciation, giving up, sacrifice, do not exist where there is understanding. Understanding is the very essence of no conflict. Renunciation is conflict. To give up is the action of will, which is born of choice and conflict. To give up is to exchange, and in exchange there is no freedom, but only more confusion and misery. 2 days later, he had flown to Paris, where he stayed with friends in an 8th-floor apartment. Coming down from the valleys and high mountains into a big, noisy, dirty town affects the body. It was a lovely day when we left, through deep valleys, waterfalls, and deep woods, to a blue lake with wide roads. It was a violent change from the peaceful, isolated place to a town that's noisy night and day, to a hot, clammy air. Sitting quietly in the afternoon, looking over the rooftops, watching the shape of roofs and their chimneys, most unexpectedly, that benediction, that strength, that otherness came with gentle clarity. It filled the room and remained. It is here as this is being written. Next day. From the top of an 8th-floor window, the trees along the avenue were becoming yellow, russet and red in the midst of a long line of rich green. From this height, the tops of the trees were brilliant in their color, and the roar of the traffic came up through them, somewhat softening the noise. There's only color, not different colors. There's only love, and not different expressions of it. The different categories of love are not love. When love is broken up into fragmentation as divine and carnal, it ceases to be love. Jealousy is the smoke that smothers the fire. Looking down on that mass of color with different colors, there's only purity, however much it may be broken up. But impurity, however much it may be changed, covered over, resisted, will always remain impure, like violence. Purity is not in conflict with impurity. Impurity can never become pure, any more than violence can become non-violence. Violence simply has to cease. There are two pigeons who have made their home under the slate roof across the courtyard. The female goes in first, and then slowly, with great dignity, the male follows, and then for the night they remain there. Early this morning they came out, the male first, and then the other. They stretched their wings, preened, and lay down flat on the cold roof. Soon, from nowhere, other pigeons came, a dozen of them. They settled around these two, preening, cooing, pushing each other in a friendly way. Then, all of a sudden, they all flew away, except the first two. The sky was overcast, there were heavy clouds, full of light on the horizon, and a long streak of blue sky. Meditation has no beginning and no end. In it there's no achievement and no failure, no gathering and no renunciation. It is a movement without finality. It is a movement without finality, and so beyond and above time and space. The experiencing of it is the denying of it. For the experiencer is bound to time and space, memory and recognition. The foundation of true meditation is that passive awareness, which is the total freedom from authority and ambition, envy and fear. Meditation has no meaning, no significance whatsoever without this freedom, without self-knowing. As long as there is choice, there is no self-knowing. Choice implies conflict, which prevents the understanding of what is. Wandering off into some fancy, into some romantic beliefs, is not meditation. The brain must strip itself of every myth, illusion, and security, and face the reality of their falseness. There is no distraction. Everything is in the movement of meditation. The flower is the form, the scent, the color, and the beauty that is the whole of it. Tear it to pieces, actually or verbally, then there is no flower, only a remembrance of what was, which is never the flower. Meditation is the whole flower in its beauty, withering and living. This is a selection from India. There was a long stretch of black clouds, heavy with rain, from horizon to horizon, north, south, and white were the breakers. It was pouring in the north, and slowly coming south. And from the bridge over the river there was a long white line of waves against the black horizon. Buses, cars, bicycles, and naked feet were making their way across the bridge, and rain was coming in a fury. The river was empty, as it generally is at that time, and the water was as dark as the sky. There wasn't even that lovely heron, and it was deserted. Across the bridge was part of the big town, crowded, noisy, dirty, pretentious, prosperous, and a little way further to the left were the mud huts, dilapidated buildings, small, unclean shops, a small factory and a crowded road, a cow lying right in the middle of it, the buses and cars going around it. There were streaks of bright red towards the west, but they too were being covered up by the coming rain. Past beyond the police station, over a narrow bridge, is the road among the rice fields, going south, away from the noisy, filthy town. Then it began to rain, heavy, sharp downpour that made puddles in a second in the road, and there was running water where there was dry land. It was a furious rain, an exploding rain that washed, cleansed, purified the earth. The villagers were soaked to the skin, but they didn't seem to mind. They went on with their laughter and chatter, their naked feet in the puddles. The little hut with the oil lamp was leaking, the buses roared by, splattering everybody, and the cycles with their feeble lamps passed with a little tinkle into the heavy rain. Everything was being washed clean, the past and the present. There was no time, no future. Every step was timeless, and thought, a thing of time, stopped. It could not go further or go back. It had no existence. And every drop of that furious rain was the river, the sea, and the unmelting snow. There was total, complete emptiness, and in it were creation, love, and death, not separate. You had to watch your step, the buses passed almost touching you. Across the river, smoke was going up in a straight column. It was a simple movement bursting into the sky. There wasn't a breath of air. There wasn't a ripple on the river, and every leaf was still. The parrots were the only noisy movement as they flashed by. Even the little fisherman's boat did not disturb the water. Everything seemed to have frozen in stillness except the smoke. Even though it was going so straight up in the sky, there was a certain gaiety in it and freedom of total action. And beyond the village and the smoke was the glowing sky of the evening. It had been a cool day, and the sky had been open, and there was the light of 1,000 winters. It was short, penetrating, and expansive. It went with you everywhere, it wouldn't leave you. Like perfume, it was in the most unexpected places. It seemed to have entered into the most secret corners of one's being. It was a light that left no shadow, and every shadow lost its depth. Because of it, all substance lost its density. It was as though you looked through everything, through the trees on the other side of the wall, through your own self. Yourself was as transparent as the sky and as open. It was intense to be with. It was intense, and to be with it was to be passionate, not the passion of feeling or desire, but a passion that would never wither or die. It was a strange light. It exposed everything and made vulnerable. And what had no protection was love. You couldn't be what you were. You were burnt out without leaving any ashes. And unexpectedly, there was not a thing but that light. We will end here for today.